Listen to me very carefully, because this might be the one truth you've been avoiding. Most people do not fail because they lack talent or time or intelligence. They fail because they do not trust themselves enough to begin. They wake up every day carrying an invisible weight of doubt, and they think it is normal. They think it is wise to second guess their own voice. They think it is safer to wait for clarity than to create it. And so they stay stuck in a life that never quite begins. The question is not whether you are capable. The question is whether you are willing to believe that you are. And most people are not. Not because they are weak, but because they have been trained to distrust themselves for so long that confidence now feels like arrogance. They shrink before they speak. They hesitate before they act. They calculate every risk before they even dream. And the worst part is, they do not even realize it. Doubt has become their default. You doubt yourself not because there is something wrong with you. You doubt yourself because the world taught you that your worth was conditional, that you had to earn your value, that you had to be liked before you could speak, that you had to be perfect before you could try, that you had to be validated before you could move. And after enough years of that message, you stopped asking what you wanted. You started asking what would keep you safe. But safety and growth do not live in the same house. You cannot expand while trying to protect your ego from failure. You cannot evolve while begging others to approve your every step. You cannot become who you are while being afraid of who you might be. That is the tension we live in. You were born to move forward, but you were trained to hesitate. You were born to create, but you were taught to compare. You were born with courage, but you learned to mask it with fear that sounded like logic. The truth is, you already know what you want. You already feel the pull inside, the idea, the risk, the dream. It is not clarity that you lack. It is belief. Belief that your voice matters, that your presence matters, that your choices can shape a future you do not need to apologize for. And until that belief is reclaimed, you will keep spinning in circles, not because you are lost, but because you have not yet chosen to trust yourself enough to walk. Most of the doubt you carry was never yours to begin with. It was handed to you one sentence at a time by people who never learned how to see their own worth. And somewhere along the way, you started believing them. Maybe it was a parent who spoke more about what you lacked than what you had. Maybe it was a teacher who measured your potential by test scores. Maybe it was a friend who made you feel like too much or not enough. Maybe it was the silence that followed your courage, the absence of affirmation when you needed it most. And slowly, quietly, you began to shape your sense of self around the echoes of their opinions. You started building your identity not from truth, but from caution. You memorized the rules of approval. You practiced the art of pleasing. You learned how to stay small so no one would target your light. And the more you adapted, the more distant you became from yourself. You stopped asking what you loved. You started asking what was acceptable. You stopped following your curiosity. You started fearing failure. Not because you were weak, but because someone once convinced you that failure meant you were less. These wounds are not dramatic. They are subtle. They are the kind that stay quiet but run deep. A comment made in passing, a laugh at your expense, a raised eyebrow when you shared your dream. They seem small in the moment, but they become loud in your decisions. They shape how you show up. They determine what you say yes to and what you never try. And the worst part is you don't even question them anymore. You think the doubt is part of you, but it is not. It is a story you've heard so many times that you began to repeat it to yourself. What no one told you is that emotional bruises work like repetition. The more often you hear something, the more likely you are to believe it, whether it's true or not. And your brain is wired for survival, not truth. It remembers fear better than joy. It stores shame faster than hope. So the voices you internalized, the ones that said you were too much or not enough, became your inner narrator. And now, even when no one is criticizing you, you do it for them. Even when the room is silent, the judgment remains. But here's the truth they never told you. You are allowed to question the voices that shaped you. You are allowed to rewrite the words that built your fear. You are allowed to let go of someone else's pain that was passed down to you like it was your birthright. You are not responsible for the wounds they carried, only for the ones you choose to keep carrying. And the moment you begin to see that, you take your power back. You realize that self-doubt is not your natural state. It is your conditioned response. This is not about blaming the past. It is about recognizing what it taught you so you can unlearn it. Because until you do, you will keep shrinking in rooms you were meant to stand tall in. You will keep hesitating in decisions you were meant to lead. And worst of all, you will keep living a life that fits someone else's voice, not your own. The question is no longer what hurt you. The question is what you're still letting speak through you today. Most people treat self-doubt like weather, as if it just arrives without warning, as if it comes and goes on its own schedule, as if they have no say in it. But self-doubt is not weather. It is not a natural condition. It is a pattern. It is a decision that has been repeated so many times that it now feels automatic. It is a response that once served you in a moment of fear and slowly became a habit. And habits are not destiny. They are simply rehearsed choices. You do not wake up doubting yourself because you are broken. You wake up doubting yourself because you trained your mind to ask the wrong questions. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if they laugh? What if I try and nothing changes? You built a life around caution instead of curiosity, around fear instead of faith, around defense instead of direction. And the more often you ask those questions, the more convincing they sound. Doubt becomes familiar, familiar becomes safe, and safe becomes the cage. The mistake we make is thinking self-doubt is a feeling we have no control over. But doubt is not a feeling. It is a frame. It is the lens you look through, and every lens filters reality. When you choose to believe that your worth is conditional, you will see every risk as a threat. When you believe your ideas only matter if others approve, you will shrink before you even speak. When you believe failure defines you, you will avoid everything that makes growth possible. None of this is random. It is a practiced way of seeing, and that means you can practice something else. You can choose a different question. What if I succeed? What if I learn something I could never learn by standing still? What if this step, even if messy, leads me somewhere better than staying silent? What if my life is waiting on the other side of this doubt? Every time you choose a better question, you interrupt the old pattern. You remind your mind that it works for you, not the other way around. You are not a victim of your inner voice. You are the author. And every thought you allow to stay becomes part of your script. You can edit that script. You can choose words that build rather than break. You can speak to yourself like someone worth listening to, because you are. The power of self-trust is not reserved for the lucky few. It is built one small choice at a time by people who are tired of letting fear drive the story. It may not feel like a choice right now, but that is because you have practiced doubt longer than belief. The muscle of confidence is weak, not broken. It just needs use. And use starts with permission. The permission to see yourself differently. To believe that every hesitation is not a verdict, but an invitation. To see doubt not as a reason to stop, but as a sign that you are stepping beyond the old pattern. And every step outside of that pattern is a declaration that you are no longer living on repeat, that you are choosing to believe again. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it is a byproduct. Most people wait for it like it is a signal that now is the time. They wait to feel ready, to feel certain, to feel strong. But the truth is, confidence never comes before the decision. It follows the decision. It follows movement. It follows action that is taken even when the voice inside you is unsure. Confidence is not what gets you started. Commitment is. You start not because you believe you will succeed. You start because you decide that staying stuck is no longer an option. We have been taught that certainty is a requirement for change. That before we take a step, we must know the outcome. But life does not work like that. Growth does not wait for certainty. It responds to intention. It responds to motion. Every time you take a step without knowing where it leads, you teach your brain something new. You show it that fear is not fatal, that discomfort is not a reason to retreat, that you are capable of movement even in the dark. And that is where transformation begins. Confidence built on results is fragile. It breaks when the outcome fails. But confidence built on commitment is resilient. It endures because it is rooted in choice, not circumstance. You can choose to keep showing up. You can choose to speak even if your voice shakes. You can choose to act even if the doubt is loud. Commitment is not glamorous. It is not loud. It does not always feel powerful, but it is the thing that keeps you in the game when everything else tries to pull you out. You do not need to believe in yourself with every fiber of your being to begin. You just need to believe that staying still costs more than taking the next small step. You need to believe that who you are becoming matters more than who you have been. You need to believe that motion creates momentum and that movement creates meaning. Because when you commit to a direction, the path starts to appear. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Each step opens the next. And each choice builds a story that doubt can no longer erase. There will be moments when the old voice returns, when the fear resurfaces, when the question, what if, whispers in your mind. But those moments are not signs to stop. They are signs that you are moving into a space your past never occupied. They are signs that you are stepping into authorship, into ownership, into the kind of life that does not wait for permission to begin. And that is what commitment really is. It is the quiet but firm decision that you will keep going even when no one claps, even when nothing is certain, even when confidence still feels out of reach. So stop asking if you are ready. Ask if you are willing. Because readiness is a feeling, but willingness is a decision. And decisions shape destinies. You do not need to feel brave to act. You need to act to remember that you are brave. And that memory begins the moment you commit to movement without guarantees. Most people are waiting to believe in themselves before they do anything bold. They think confidence is the key that unlocks action, but it is not. Action is the thing that builds confidence. Movement is what tells your nervous system you are capable. Experience is what teaches your mind to trust. The idea that you must feel certain before you begin is one of the most dangerous lies ever told. It keeps people stuck in mental rehearsal for years. It convinces them to prepare endlessly, yet never show up. But belief is not built in your head, it is built in your steps. The truth is, self-trust is not an emotion you find. It is a relationship you build. And like any relationship, it is built on follow-through. When you say you will do something and then you do it, even if imperfectly, you tell yourself that your word matters, that your effort counts, that your choices are not empty. But when you delay or quit every time fear shows up, you train your brain to believe that your own promises are negotiable. And that creates deeper doubt than any failure ever could. You gain confidence not by thinking better, but by doing something despite what you think. Each time you act, you collect evidence. Evidence that you can speak even if you tremble, that you can show up even if you're not perfect, that you can learn while doing. The more evidence you collect, the more your brain updates its belief about who you are. Not based on theory, but based on reality. You become someone who can move even when uncertain. That is real power. We are so used to needing validation to feel valuable. We want someone to tell us we are doing it right before we even begin. But the most life-changing confidence does not come from praise. It comes from repetition. From the muscle memory of choosing to act even when no one is watching, even when no one applauds, even when the voice inside you still wavers. Because eventually that voice learns. It learns from action. It learns from motion. It learns that fear does not get the final say. You cannot think your way into belief. You must behave your way there. That does not mean forcing yourself to do everything at once. It means starting where you are, with what you have, and doing what you can. You begin with the smallest act of alignment, the email you were afraid to send, the decision you kept postponing, the conversation you avoided, the dream you wrote down but never took seriously. And you do it. Not perfectly, not confidently, but completely. And as you do, something shifts. You realize the fear was loud but not accurate. The doubt was heavy but not permanent. The delay was comfortable but not honest. And you begin to rebuild trust in the most sacred place of all, within yourself. Not because you finally feel ready, but because you chose to move without permission. And that choice changed the script. That choice gave your mind new evidence. That choice created belief where there used to be hesitation. So if you are waiting to believe in yourself before you act, you are waiting for something that only action can deliver. Trust is not a feeling you wait for, it is a decision you live into. And every time you move, you remember who you are. Not because someone told you, but because your own actions made it undeniable. You do not live in the facts of your life. You live in the story you tell yourself about those facts. Every day you wake up with a voice in your head that narrates your reality. It tells you who you are, what you can expect, and what is possible for someone like you. And most of the time, that voice is not telling the truth. It is telling the most familiar version of the past. It is replaying fears that once protected you, doubts that once felt useful, pain that once shaped you. And because it is familiar, you trust it. You assume that your thoughts are honest. But not every thought is true. Not every memory is meant to be carried forward. Not every story deserves to be repeated. The truth is, your identity is not set in stone. It is shaped by repetition. Whatever you say to yourself most often becomes your identity, not because it is accurate, but because it is reinforced. If you tell yourself you are lazy, you will notice every moment you slow down. If you say you are not creative, you will ignore every spark of originality. If you believe you are unworthy, you will reject compliments, sabotage progress, and settle for less. You are not living the truth. You are living the script. But you can choose another script. You can interrupt the story. You can speak something new of your life, not because everything is fixed, but because you are not who you were. You are not the same person who once failed. You are not the child who was overlooked. You are not the teenager who was laughed at. You are not the adult who froze under pressure. You are becoming. And becoming means you get to change the language you use about yourself. Words are not decoration. They are direction. Every sentence you repeat creates either a wall or a window. A wall that traps you in the old version of yourself, or a window that shows you what could be possible if you just believed again. So start small. Choose one lie you have believed for too long. Replace it with a better truth. Not a perfect one, not a loud one, just one that helps you move forward. One that gives you room to grow. Say, I am not broken, I am rebuilding. Say, I am not behind, I am becoming. Say, I am not weak, I am learning strength. Say, I am not too late, I am right on time for the life I am meant to live. These words may feel strange at first, but so did doubt once. The more you repeat a better story, the more your brain adapts, the more your spirit opens, the more your choices align. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, dream differently, because your identity is no longer chained to survival. It is shaped by vision. You are the narrator, you are the author, you are the one who gets to decide what your voice sounds like. And when that voice changes, everything else does too. Not overnight, but step by step, sentence by sentence, one new story at a time. Look around you, the people you talk to, the voices you listen to, the content you consume, the routines you repeat, all of it is shaping you. And most of the time, not consciously. Slowly, quietly, your environment becomes a mirror of who you believe you are allowed to be. And the longer you stay in that mirror, the more real it feels. Not because it is true, but because it is familiar. And what is familiar becomes what is possible. Even when it limits you, you are not just influenced by your environment, you are built by it. If you spend time with people who normalize fear, you will stop aiming high. If you spend time with people who joke about quitting, you will start entertaining that exit. If your feed is filled with noise and comparison, your mind will become more reactive than reflective. The human brain adapts to the signals it receives. And if those signals are small, your sense of self will shrink to fit them. But what most people forget is that your environment is not permanent. It is a reflection of your current choices, not your future potential. You can design the voices around you. You can filter what enters your mind. You can choose what stays close and what needs to fade. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is outgrow what once felt comfortable. Not because it was bad, but because it no longer fits the person you are becoming. This is not about control. It is about awareness. Because without awareness, you will unconsciously absorb whatever is around you. You will repeat habits that belong to someone else's vision. You will chase goals that were never truly yours. And you will wake up one day wondering why you feel disconnected from your own life. But with awareness, you start to ask better questions. Does this voice challenge me or drain me? Does this space expand me or shrink me? Does this rhythm lead me toward purpose or distraction? The people you spend time with are not just companions. They are mirrors. They reflect your standards. They echo your beliefs. They remind you of what is acceptable and what is possible. So when you raise your standards, some mirrors will no longer reflect you accurately. That is not loss. That is alignment. That is the price of growth. And it is worth every step. If you want to become someone new, spend time in places that speak to that version of you. Read words that pull you forward. Listen to voices that stir your courage. Create rhythms that match your goals, not your fears. Because your environment is not just where you live, it is the preview of who you are becoming. Choose it like your future depends on it. Because in many ways it does. From the moment you could understand words, the world started telling you who to be. Be quieter, be louder, be more like them, be less like that. You learned to shape yourself around expectations that were never rooted in who you truly were. And the more you bent, the more you forgot what it felt like to stand straight. You started believing that the answer was somewhere outside of you. That if you could just become the right version of yourself, the world would finally approve. But the truth is, you were never supposed to become someone else. You were meant to return to who you have always been. The journey is not about achievement, it is about alignment. It is not about adding more layers, it is about peeling them away. Beneath the doubt and the fear and the pressure is a version of you that never needed fixing. A version that was curious before it was cautious, bold before it was careful, whole before it was made to feel inadequate. That version of you still exists, not as a memory but as a blueprint. It is waiting to be remembered, not reinvented. You were not born afraid to speak. You learned silence from judgment. You were not born doubting your worth. You learned comparison from a culture obsessed with perfection. You were not born waiting for permission. You learned hesitation from being punished for risk. But what is learned can be unlearned. What is borrowed can be returned. What is imposed can be released. And the moment you choose to come back to yourself, everything begins to change. Returning to yourself does not mean rejecting growth. It means letting go of everything that was never truly yours. The beliefs that kept you small, the voices that made you doubt, the habits that numbed your intuition. This is not about rebellion, it is about remembrance. Remembering that your value was never on trial, that your potential does not need to be proven, that your path does not need to match anyone else's to be worthy. The deepest confidence does not come from pretending to be strong. It comes from the quiet knowing that who you are is enough, that you can show up without performance, that you can lead without comparison, that you can love without needing to be more. When you return to that place, decisions feel clearer, doubt loses its grip, and life begins to feel like something you are building, not something you are surviving. You do not need to chase another version of yourself. You need to uncover the one that already knows, the one that already sees, the one that already feels. Your future is not built on becoming someone you are not. It is built on being deeply connected to who you have always been underneath it all. The strength, the softness, the vision, the voice. It was never missing, just buried, just waiting, just asking to be trusted again. So stop trying to become more. Start becoming true. Let the noise fall away. Let the weight of proving fall off your shoulders. And in the stillness, listen. Because underneath all the striving is a voice that already knows the way. Not the loudest voice, but the most honest one. The one that has been with you from the start. The one that does not need to perform. The one that is already home.